I have not been on this channel for a hot minute, but I kept seeing these videos about Octopath Traveler 0, and I thought, I didn't get a chance to play it, obviously. I'm not at one of those conferences that people get to play it at, but I wanted to give my thoughts on it because people keep talking about it in weird ways, and I'm just like, I'm excited for another Octopath Traveler game. Now, I never got a chance to really get into Champions of the Continent, but I played the first two games a crap ton, like multiple times. I even did solo runs. It's like unsuccessfully, except for one that was successfully, and I'll get into that a little bit too. I think I made a video about it on this channel, so feel free to go check that out. But Octopath Traveler 0 has a lot of potential in a lot of ways. I never thought it was going to be just like a mobile game on desktop, like for some reason people kept thinking. Every time I see those thumbnails, I actually get a little bit irked because I'm just like, why would you think that they're just copying it over? Like, Square is not necessarily that cheap to be doing that. And so they were obviously testing features in Champions of the Continent, so it was pretty obvious that they were going to probably bring the book and the fan over to the next game. It was pretty obvious that they were probably going to experiment more like they did in the Octopath Traveler 2 final battles, where you had multiple people in battle at the same time. And they obviously did that in COTC. So I get why people thought when they saw those features in the game that there was some influence from the mobile game, but not that they were just going to post the mobile game over. I just thought that was dumb. But, I thought they were going to go Octopath Traveler 3. It's kind of go sequential. But they're going back in time. They're going back to the first region. And I'm kind of curious as to why they went to the first region again for the third time now, because COTC also uses that same Austera. But I digress. You know what? If they think that that's going to work, I think I saw a map screenshot where there was actually extra areas too. I don't know if that was from COTC or if it's a new area for Octopath Traveler 0, but I just really like this idea. I'm also making this post because I made a really interesting Octopath Traveler 3 predictions post that I'll share down below. And I think you should definitely check it out. If you love Octopath, this is like catnip for you, because I essentially was playing Octopath Traveler 2 so much that I started getting so many ideas of what an Octopath Traveler 3 game would look like. What did the jobs look like? What did the characters look like? What kind of unique jobs could you then have? And so, like, we saw how the thief went from just this kind of generic thief in Octopath Traveler 1 to basically a thief assassin in the second game. And so I thought, like, what could I do instead that's different? Let me just look at my post real quick so I can kind of give you an idea. But essentially, each class had a different feeling. Because, like, in the first game, the warrior was this old, retired knight. In the second game, it was a, nobleman, like a prince. And so I thought, like, the warrior could be, like, a paladin or a barbarian. And I go into detail in each actual post. Like, I don't want to get, like, I'm not just going to read over this post completely for this video, but I just wanted to share with you the ideas because it's super fun. So, like, just like how in Crick in Octopath Traveler 2 was essentially a paladin, I thought that would be really cool for the next character for the warrior to be. Like, sure, technically the cleric could also be, but I think it's more interesting for the warrior to be the paladin. And then instead of a scholar, you have one or two pathways. And I kind of chose two different for each class because I just think that might be some overlap in a way. But the scholar could either be a novice scholar. So we had like someone who was a professor in the first game, and in the second game it was kind of this outcast. So I thought, okay, what if we had someone who is still learning, and then throughout his or her chapters they would actually learn the new spells in those story moments. And I thought that would be kind of cool, where you actually kind of almost like Hogwarts in a way, where you're going to classes or you're going to go learn. Like, the first chapter might have been a class, the second chapter might have been a field trip, and then the third chapter might actually be like the person actually starting their journey. And then the other idea for the scholar, basically a mage, would be the witch doctor. And I thought that was kind of cool, like an interesting twist on it. And so you kind of have that same dark twist. You'll notice here too, I kind of have a more rougher option for each one. You kind of have a more like righteous and rougher option for each one. Maybe you could actually even do both. That would be really cool. Next was the merchant, and so I thought, like, what if, we had you have just basically a traditional merchant with Tressa. Okay, cool. And then what if you had, and then we had like the merchant in the second game being kind of like an inventor and being someone who is like very charismatic. What if we had a pirate as the merchant? And so the pirate is a merchant for the black market rather than for traditional markets. That's kind of cool because they kind of hinted at a black market in Octopath Traveler 2. And then you have like the black market fencer, just kind of going straight into the black market in general. So the pirate kind of be more on his own. That's why you get a boat. I thought that was kind of cool, kind of leading into where Particio was in the second game. But the black market fencer was the other option. They're kind of overlapping, but I thought it was kind of cool. The apothecary, the apothecary is really interesting because you have the necromancer as an apothecary. So going full tilt into what Octopath Traveler 2 was trying to do with the final boss of her chapters, Cassidy's chapters. And so you have like the apothecary who can heal, but more like heal from the dead, which I think is kind of funny. And then you also have a monk, which kind of made me think of the man who lived to be 200 years old in China, and he was basically sort of a monk, but he was more of an herbologist, and I just thought that's kind of cool. So Li Qin Yuan, that's his name. And the thief, I only had one option for, but that was Robin Hood. Come on, Robin Hood. No more words needed. The hunter's really interesting because now we had a like animalistic, almost old English looking person in the first game. In the second game, we had an actual animal person as the hunter. And then the third game, I was like, let's change it up. We need a different kind of hunter. We don't need the more animal-based hunters. Like, we need something that's different. And so, like, we have a demon hunter. So Diablo was a very big inspiration there. Or you had the bounty hunter. I thought that was kind of cool. Like, oh, man, you have, like, you're chasing down either demons, and that might play into the story. Or you're a bounty hunter, so you're finding different people around the game, which is how they'll interact with other characters, too. That's kind of cool. Now, with the dancer, you had basically a prisoner, a slave, who was the first game's dancer. The second game's dancer, who was it? Oh, yeah, just a happy-go-lucky girl. Like, that's about it. Like, right? That's basically her whole vibe. Well, what if you had a more interesting type of character, which is what each of these different classes I'm going into with? A shaman, right? A shaman as kind of more of a spiritual leader, kind of like a cleric in a way, but more like a Native American kind of shaman. But they're dancing in order to accomplish their goals. I thought that'd be kind of cool because they'll be going around and doing kind of what Ophelia did on her story in the first game, where they're going around performing rituals around the region. And then you also have the blade dancer. So kind of like that person that has all the blades attached to their dress and you're dancing around. And I don't know exactly how that would be, but it's kind of like also using fans too might be interesting. For the cleric, I also put paladin on there or shaman. And I think that's just kind of an interesting change of pace. Like the cleric doesn't have to necessarily be holy. You can be kind of like a shaman or a witch doctor like you have in the second game. And so I also have special ideas for the special jobs, but I'll leave that for you to check out on the blog post. But in Octopath Traveler 0, you have the ability to choose your main character's job, I believe. I think they announced that. And so you can kind of tweak it almost like in Oblivion, almost in a way, where you can kind of just like, okay, I picked this. Let me go down this pathway. And I also wonder too, I think they said something about how skills are transferable, which is interesting. Almost like weapons in a way. And then on top of that, you have the city building aspects. You kind of have that, like, people who like the Fallout 4 city building will probably have a field day with this. And Suikoden fans will also have a field day with this. And then you have just the 8-character party, which would be interesting because I always hated having to have half my team in the bar kind of just hanging out. I'd rather just have everybody together. And I feel like I might even just like keep the same eight player team. I'll recruit all the other people, but I won't actually bring them with me on the team for my first playthrough. I'll pretend that it's like a normal Octopath game where you only get 8 characters. And it'd be interesting to get a playthrough where you're just playing with the original 8 Octopath Traveler characters. So like, I'm just thinking of like new ways of playing it, because when I played Octopath Traveler 1, I tried doing a solo run. It was so brutal. I was dumb. I first tried doing it with Therion, and that sort of worked, but then I decided to change his to a speed run. But then I tried it with Ulbrich, the warrior, and turns out that's the hardest solo run you can do. And I got to the final boss, and he just kept wiping me, despite the fact I was like 25 levels over leveled. And then in the second game, I did it with Hikari. I actually successfully did it, and the reason why I chose him is that first off, he's one of the 2 characters that get extra turns, and that was a huge deal. Having an extra turn is so helpful. And then the other reason is that he could learn skills. So you could learn magic skills, which I definitely did. I also learned the kind of skills that apply to your weapons. So you can actually get like a dark magic spell that applied to your weapons for however many turns. And then so what I ended up doing was, you had the Vengeful Blade for the warrior, which means when you get hit, you hit back. And then you also had you could learn the skill. I don't remember what it was called, but it was basically invincibility, where you could just it would automatically miss you, and so you could just kind of double that up, where you Vengeful Blade gives you 3 turns per usage, and then the invincibility one or avoiding one would give you 1. So you kind of just stack those up a little bit, and then you could just have basically infinite invincibility, but each time you get hit, you hit back. And it takes a lot of MP, and then you have to be careful about managing MP, and you have to be careful about like actually making sure you have enough attacks to go back, and making sure you have the right weapons attached to. Like it was more complicated than what I'm explaining, but it was smart. And then if on top of that, if you attach the or if you incite, so you do more damage, for example, or you can do the magic attachment, and so instead of hitting once, you're hitting once plus the magic attack. So it gets really complex, and you're just basically sitting there tanking hits and then just dealing out a ton of damage and cracking them without having to do much, which was crazy to me. And so it was a unique playstyle for Hikari that, I toyed with my main playthrough, and I eventually was able to go full send into that whenever I was doing it. And then I also learned the advanced dagger attack, that was like the most powerful dagger attack, or the most powerful sword attack. And it was just interesting how you could find the most rare characters and learn their abilities. And that's why I chose Hikari. And it took me forever, and I think I might have a video explaining what I did for it in a different on a different video. But it was so hard. It was so hard. But I finally did it. It took me like 2 weeks to beat that final boss, because the first 3 bosses didn't really take that much effort at all. A few days and whatnot. And then I started doing what's her name, Throne's journey, and I got to the final boss with Throne, because she's the other character that has the second turn, an actual second turn. And with her, I think I've gotten pretty close to beating the final boss, but I just couldn't do it, and then I gave up because I was like, it's too much work. But my point is, there's these alternative play styles that make it a lot of fun to kind of change things up. And since I started playing on the Switch, I didn't have achievements like I did in the first game. And so I actually played the first game originally on Xbox and played the second game originally on PC, and then I played both again on Switch. And I'm kind of mad I bought the Switch games now, because I don't have access to achievements, and achievements are so much fun. That's why I did the speedrun in the first place. But yes, Octopath Traveler 0 has a lot of potential, and I think there's so much fun that could be had with this series, that you can just change things up. And with the amount of new features they are bringing with that game, I think it's going to be really interesting what you can do with solo runs, right? You can optimize your character when you first make the person to be more balanced for a solo run, or you can optimize them for a full team. It's up to you. And then maybe that'll change how you build your city too, if you're doing solo runs. And I wonder how much you can accomplish with having just 8 characters versus the 64 or whatever max they have, or just having 1, or just having 4. Like, having those limitations, they're artificial, but they make the game more challenging, more fun, and different. And with the newer additions to that series, I think it's going to change things up a lot. Let me know if you like Octopath, and let me know if you want more visuals next time when I make this video. Thank you.